I personally hate meetings. I hate them. Now, here's something you will probably only get from this channel. Your first impression is your first chance to disarm people. Psst. That's called foreshadowing. I was a ripe candidate for getting walked on and beat down. Yeah, we're gonna need a drink for this one. Few things are harder than building a strong team. Well, actually, now that I think about it, maybe roofing in July or crab fishing in freezing Alaskan seas might give a team building a run for its money, but whatever. All semantics aside, building a strong team is extremely difficult, especially if you're new to an organization or coming into an already established, tight-knit team as an outsider. Now, compound this with being placed in charge of this team, and the team is full of experienced, hot-headed, disjointed individuals that can't work effectively together because everyone is so utterly selfish that arguments occur over what kinds of pens are the best. Now, compound this with the fact of being placed in charge of a team that is full of experienced, hot-headed, disjointed individuals that can't work effectively together because everyone is so utterly selfish that arguments occur over what kinds of pens are the best. Now, while this may sound like fiction to you, I assure you it isn't. I've experienced this kind of frustration firsthand, both on the civilian and military side of the house. Throughout this video, I'm going to discuss my 5-step process for team building and use a real-world example of the team I built during my time as a contracted engineer and project manager while working at Shell Oil and Lubricants in Texas. Let's get at it. Now, in today's video, we're going to discuss team building. Woohoo! Doesn't that sound exciting? Actually, it doesn't, because most of our experience with team building involves horribly dull and patronizing exercises our companies force us to do in an attempt to force our unhappy people to perform mundane tasks to an unclear end. But fret not. It's not all doom and gloom, because I'm here to hopefully provide some valuable insight on how to build a top performing team based off a few books I've read, but mostly pulls from my real world experience. Now, before we jump into my method for building high performance teams, let's first discuss why team building is more important than you think. And if you'd like to skip this part of the video and jump right into the team building strategy, jump ahead to about right here. Okay, now usually when I prepare a script for one of these videos, I spend a little bit of time researching articles or pulling from books. You know, just some stuff I have on hand to help me find the right words to just put it on paper. This is one of those topics where that's not really necessary because I've experienced multiple versions of good and bad teams over the years, and as such, I'm going to keep this simple and to the point. The purpose of a team is to bring together 2 or more individuals with a set of skills to the table while simultaneously working to achieve a common goal. I've chosen these words very carefully, and that's for a reason. You see, the problem with most teams is that while yes, they are a group of individuals working together to achieve a common goal, they often lack the skills required to move the needle forward. Want to see a team breed discontent with each other rapidly? Create an environment where the bulk of the workload is disproportionately weighed on the shoulders of a small handful of individuals, and see just how quickly that frustration begins to boil over. Now, that's not to say that everyone on the team has to be an all-star player, but everyone has to do their part. If you don't have a strong intellectual grasp of the subject matter involved in a project, then maybe you should do your part to do the grunt work involved with putting together the finished project. Furthermore, if you're the one who's in charge of the team, it is your responsibility to recognize the abilities and limitations of each team member. Ensure everyone has an equal share in the project, and things won't be so rough when you're out at sea. Now, I want to further stress the importance of building a team by reminding you that not all team building is surrounded by a singular common project. For example, let's say your team is a collection of fast food employees working a shift together, or perhaps your team is a collective of individuals working a construction job site together. Everyone has their own mutual part to play, and their job is to do it well. Now, with all that out of the way, let's discuss my approach to team building. The process. I've used this process to build teams both in the civilian and military side of the house. It's worked on previously established high-performing teams, previously established low-performing teams, and teams I built from scratch. Now, before making this video, I've never been forced to write down my process on paper. But as I've said before in previous videos, if you want to figure out if someone actually knows what they're talking about, have them write it down. Anyways, I would summarize the process as step 1, introductions, step 2, observation, step 3, establishments, step 4, assignments, and finally, follow-up. Now, as I've said earlier, I'm going to use my team building experience while working at Shell as an oil and lubricants engineer and project manager to illustrate this process as outlined earlier. My goal with this channel is to provide you with a real-world actionable advice that is firmly grounded in reality and tested directly by me. I'm going to do my best to never provide you with information that I haven't personally put into practice myself. After all, what good is information gained from a book or a blog post if you can't prove that it will be useful to you in the real world? Now, with all that out of the way, step 1, introductions. You only get one chance to make a first impression. Now, a quick search around the internet will yield several hundred variations on this quote, and while I don't necessarily disagree with it, I do think that it leaves a lot to be desired. Now, don't misunderstand. I do believe that first impressions are critically important. Get them right, and they can make a world of difference in how easy your relationships with people can go. However, get them wrong, and you're gonna have an uphill climb to right the wrongs you have created. For example, during my early years as a young second lieutenant, I made the critical error of getting far too familiar with my soldiers that I was in charge of. Now, this is a rookie mistake because my soldiers viewed me as more of a friend than their leader. Now, I'm not saying it's not possible to be a friend to your subordinates, but there has to be a prior established hierarchy and firm trust between yourself and those you're in charge of. As a new lieutenant, I had neither. They viewed me as the new guy who didn't know anything, and I just wanted to be one of the guys. And that was a big mistake and created a bad first impression. Now, fast forward several years, and I was reassigned to that same unit to be their commander. There were sure to be many of the soldiers there that viewed me as a friend back when I was lieutenant, so it was my job to make a strong impression. Now, mind you, I couldn't make a first impression because I had already screwed that up years back as a second lieutenant. But the opportunity was still there to make a strong impression. And that's exactly what I did, and everything worked out much better for it. The point of that tangent is to reassure you that while first impressions are important, they aren't a death sentence. Okay, so now that you have a better understanding of how much I sucked at first impressions in the past, let's make one now at this new assignment at Shell. Now, I could go into all the cliche talking points regarding a first impression, maintaining good eye contact, giving a good, strong, firm handshake in that grip, and all that, but that's not the key piece of advice that I want to give to you. Now, here's something you will probably only get from this channel. Your first impression is your first chance to disarm people. This is your time to establish yourself as a true team player by directly and with some degree of subtlety aggressing the concerns that the team might have. Those concerns can be anything from their uncertainty about the direction of the company, their jobs, or their uncertainty with you. Yes, they could very well be uncertain about you for any number of reasons. Maybe they've had a string of bad luck with people who have previously held the position that you now hold. Perhaps you appear to be much younger or older than the typical person who fills that position. The point is, it is your job to do a little recon prior to meeting your team so you can be better prepared for that first impression. And you better believe, before I stepped on the Shell property, I had done my research. I discovered I'd be walking into a storm of disgruntled contractors and engineers because the projects were behind schedule, no one was getting paid on time, and the constant last-minute changes fueled the frustrations felt by everyone. It was a mess. Now combine that with me being much younger than average for the age of someone hired for this position and my lack of experience with this kind of facility work, I was a ripe candidate for getting walked on and beat down. Everyone in that facility had every reason to be against me and not accept me as a member of the team. It wasn't their job to conform to my style and accept me. It was my job to find my place within their existing team and change it from within. Now, one of my favorite disarming strategies is to address the primary concern that consumes the mind of older people I am new to working with. You see, with older people or people in general that have done the same kind of work for many years, all have one thing in common. They are slow to change. If it ain't broke, they ain't fixing it. And why should they? It's worked in the past, so they keep doing the same thing each day. Now, their process may not be as efficient as it can be, but either way, you need those people on your side because they have a deep, intimate knowledge of their craft, and you are years behind them in this. And with that, I like to work into our initial introduction the following idea. Hi, my name is Nick. I'm here to work with you and not against you. My job is to help you to move forward and not to change your existing strategies. I would like us to work together, and hopefully I earn the opportunity to learn from you. Please, guys, feel free to steal that outright or put your own spin on it, but I promise you, this does in fact work. No matter how bright and sunny your disposition is upon your first encounter, these old hats are always going to be secretly skeptical about you. They've worked their way up the ranks and don't want some young chocolate stud to come in and change everything because I feel like my college degree gives me some level of superiority. This strategy has also worked well for me with the construction contractors as well. As stated earlier, I did my homework and found out that these contractors were frustrated regarding their money. They weren't getting paid on time, they were behind schedule. All of the constant changes and indecision from higher command created a negative work environment. My first encounters with them included phrases such as, "Hey, how you doing? You know, I heard that you're still waiting on some invoices to pay out. If you got a moment, can we sit down sometime soon so I can get caught up on what you're owed? I want to help make this right." Boom, immediate disarm. Right off the start, I'm not only addressing their biggest concerns, but I'm also making a deliberate plan to follow up with them. Instead of being perceived as just the new guy, I am now the new guy who is aware of their concerns and within the first 4 hours of being on site is eager to fix their problems. This is how you sow the seed of trust in a team. Discover their needs and address them. If you can't follow through with your promises, then don't make them. The moment you are viewed as a liar, you will lose credibility within the team and they will leave you to fend for yourself. Step 2, observation. Now the observation step is the one that you will most easily misunderstand. The aim isn't simply to watch everyone and to make notes. The purpose of this step is to generate an intimate understanding of the entire process and how everybody fits into it. Think of the team as puzzle pieces working together to build the picture on the front of the box. I like to call this step management by wandering around. This is defined as a style of management which involves managers or supervisors wandering around in an unstructured manner throughout the workplace at random to check with employees, equipment, or the status of ongoing work. The emphasis is on the word wandering as an unplanned movement within a workplace, rather than a plan where employees expect a visit from managers at a more systematic, pre-approved, or scheduled times. This method is so effective because it's one of the few ways you'll get the real story from people. In the military, when we have a general officer or some VIP comes to visit, we put on what we like to call a dog and pony show. This is where we would develop a plan for moving the distinguished guest around. We're going to pre-position soldiers and equipment and give them talking points to ensure that they paint a flattering picture of the organization. I've seen this happen in the civilian side too. Take the time to pop in on your people unannounced and you're more likely to get the real story from them. This is also a good time to implement the strategy of getting your hands dirty as a leader. I made a video going into detail about what this means and why it's so effective, so check that one out after this video. So take the time to climb around equipment. Put yourself in dirty or unflattering situations that others won't. This will help to set you apart from others. This will help you to build trust very quickly. If you want to learn more about a piece of equipment or a process, maybe you should take the time to walk in their shoes, get on that assembly line, climb that ladder, scrape that grease, work that spreadsheet. Heck, even a conversation with someone about how their day is going can make all the difference to let you know what's really going on within the company. There are dozens of reasons this step is so valuable to the overall process and success of team building, but the most important reason for doing this step is to learn from others the true hierarchy within the organization. This will come handy in the next step. Step 3, establishments. Now, after my first week at Shell of getting my feet wet and spending some time in the observation step, I was ready to put into motions the establishment step. The purpose of this step is to categorize everyone in a way that establishes a hierarchy. Now, feel free to keep this step to yourself. You don't have to tell anyone that you're assigning people in this manner. You can use whatever metaphor you like when assigning everyone. If you'd prefer a sports metaphor, then be my guest. Use whatever you like. But for me, I like to use military rank to help categorize everyone. It's just what I know. It makes it easy. Now keep in mind, we use step 2, observations, to help identify who everyone is and assist us in placing them in the correct category. Failing to spend time properly observing and communicating with everyone you can is only going to make this step that much harder. Now, I assigned everyone into the following categories. And again, feel free to use whatever you like. Privates. In the Army, these are your lower level enlisted. They're the workers that get stuff done when directed by a supervisor, usually a sergeant. At Shell, this included everyone who ran the plant machines or were directly involved in the construction phases of the projects. Next up, sergeants. Commonly referred to as the backbone of the Army, these guys have earned their stripes through experience. This included plant leads, construction team leads, and they usually had about 2 to 3 people or privates working for them. Platoon sergeants. These are the sergeants that have been around for a while. They have an insane wealth of experience and are in charge of multiple sergeants and quite often are paired with an officer to help act as a subject matter expert on a topic. Their job is to bridge the gap between the sergeants who directly assist in executing orders received and the upper command who is in charge with developing said plans. These guys are really, really important, and we'll discuss why a bit later. This includes everyone from leaders of an entire section of the plant to the construction contractor leads. Usually, the buck stops with these guys. If they say go, then everyone goes. Now, on the flip side, if these guys stop, well, you stop. Again, these guys are super important to have on your team. Psst. That's called foreshadowing. Company commander. Company command is generally considered the first real command within the United States Army. At this point, you have junior officers working for you, along with a dizzying array of sergeants and junior enlisted, all with various background and experiences. Company command can force someone to have direct responsibility of between 100 and upwards of 200 soldiers. It's a daunting job to be sure, and I should know, I've done my command. This is where I viewed myself at Shell. A company commander, someone with just enough authority to get things done, but not enough to make the final decisions. But as we have stated over and over again, we have to keep in mind what defines a leader. Leaders motivate people both inside and outside the chain of command to pursue actions, focus thinking, and shape decisions for the greater good of the organization. It was my job as a commander in the Army and at Shell to shape the world around me. In the Army, it was my job to accomplish the mission, or in the case of Shell, to accomplish the projects that I had been assigned to. Next up, staff. Soldiers on staff include junior enlisted, NCOs, and officers. It's the job of staff to ensure that the battalion commander is armed with all the knowledge he needs to keep the greater machine moving forward. The staff doesn't usually care about soldiers as individuals, nor should they. As a company commander, it's your job to inform the staff of your situation. That way they can be better informed about what options the battalion commander has at his disposal in order to move forward. Now, in both the military and at Shell, these are the people I butted heads with the most. The problem with staff is most of the time they believe their piece of the pie is more important than anything else that goes on. And as such, they tend to not want to play ball or make changes when it becomes a minor inconvenience for them. When this happens, that's when you sick the big guns on them. Battalion Executive Officer, or XO. This guy, or gal, is second in command to the battalion commander. Everything is their job. I don't envy anyone with this job, but it is necessary regardless. This guy can be your best friend or your worst enemy, but more importantly, it's your job to convince the XO that you have a plan to achieve mission success, and that without his help, you cannot hope to see that plan through to the end. For me working at Shell, this guy's name was Sean. So now that we know who all the players are, let's use this information to build the team. Now, as previously stated, I viewed myself as the company commander of my team. So with that in mind, I focused on building my team one level up and one level down. Now, the reason I did this is because this aligns with how the military tends to structure its leadership roles. Now, while it's important to spend some time observing several levels down and up, the vast majority of your time should be spent one up and one down, which in this case means I should be spending one down, platoon sergeants, and one up, battalion XO. This is the core of where my team is centered. Step 4, assignments. Now this is the step where the real work can begin. Assigning clear duties and responsibilities helps to get everyone on the same sheet of music. People have a natural tendency to get frustrated when left to make decisions that they later get scolded over, especially when said decisions were made after asking multiple times over and over again for clear, concise guidance. It's too easy to avoid this frustration. You as the leader need to spend some time alone and figure out who is responsible for what. And once you've drawn up that vague outline, seek out the advice from those platoon sergeants to get their opinion. Not only will they be willing to provide you constructive feedback, which as a company commander, you will do well to take under advisement, but they will feel as if their voice has weight and will be more willing to buy into your vision for the direction that the team needs to go. Okay, I'm good. Now I realize what I'm about to say isn't culturally sensitive, but it is what it is. No one likes it when there are too many chiefs and not enough Indians. Too many good idea fairies floating around giving out their 2 cents like anybody cares. Provide clear assignments and marching orders to keep everyone on task. Now, simply putting your foot down and making sure everyone understands their assignments is not enough. Someone has to give the heading for the ship to follow. Now, if you're watching this video, that person is probably you. You have the hardest job within this team. You bear the responsibility to develop the plan and own every aspect of it. You cannot backpedal when things go wrong and put blame on someone else within your team. The moment you do that, you destroy any momentum you've built up and will lose their trust faster than you realize. It's your job to own all the failures and conversely, give credit to all the successes. Yeah, sure, you can have fun and joke about how important your role is to the team, but at the end of the day, you want to build a strong team. And nothing strengthens the bond of a team than being told that what they have done for the team is invaluable. Even if in the grand scheme of things, that thing that they did, that task that they did, really wasn't that important, play it up. Give them credit. You don't have to be a pushover, but a little positive reinforcement can get you further than constantly pointing out your team's shortfalls. As they say, you catch more flies with honey instead of vinegar. Assigning duties and responsibilities is also the first impactful step that you can take towards the most common point of frustration between team members: indecisiveness. You know, there isn't much that's more frustrating than putting a solid effort into a task, making progress, then at the last minute to have someone change their mind. Now, I'm aware that we can't control every single factor to prevent this from happening at all. I get that. I'm in fact guilty of doing this myself, but I am telling you that most of this is preventable during this step. One of the best ways I avoided this at Shell was by getting buy-in from my platoon sergeants and using the Battalion XO to force things forward. Now, here's something that happened quite often while working at Shell. In the very beginning stages of a project, we would do a rough outline of the new addition or modification. This outline would turn into a rough sketch, detailed drawings, then finalized drawings. Now, the problem was I was constantly running into obstacles preventing me from moving past these initial stages. Now imagine it, me. I was hired by this huge company to work as a project engineer and manager. I was brought on because they were behind schedule and losing money every day because these modifications weren't complete. So here I am with the plan and drawings. I can fix it, and all of a sudden it's on hold because Mr. Self-Important working upstairs on staff won't give me 2 hours of shutdown to finalize the sketch by allowing someone to crawl deeper into the pipes without fear of falling into a piece of rotating equipment. Or, my personal favorite, I would have a project held up because my contractors refused to work without getting paid for the work that they had already done. How crazy is that? We asked these guys to use their time, their resources to do these piping and electrical designs and refused to pay them for their work. Now, why was this such an issue? Well, it's because of funding, of course, because different funding could only be used to pay for certain kind of works. Insanity. I get it, it makes sense, but insane nonetheless. And this is where having a strong team comes in handy. By having the platoon sergeants on my side and by developing a strong working relationship with the Battalion XO, we were able to push past these barriers and keep it moving forward. It's not like we didn't want to work. We all wanted to work. It was in our best interest to get this job done. But we don't want to work when we don't get paid. It's as simple as that. But working as individuals wasn't working. A leader had to step in and bring this team together. Step 5, follow up. Now, moving into this final step of team building, God, I love this step. This is hands down my favorite step. It's so simple. If you choose to do nothing else I've mentioned so far, at a minimum, give this a try and see how much it changes the dynamic within your respective organization. Now, let me be clear. No one, I say again, no one wants to work in a team where everyone is held to an unbalanced standard. Holding Group A more accountable than Group B is one of the fastest ways to have mutiny on your hands. Preventing this horrible dynamic from developing is as simple as following up on the assignments from step 4. It's really that simple. Just follow up. Now, the reason many serving in leadership roles, managers, supervisors, etc., struggle with following up is they have no system in place to assist them in tracking what needs to get done. It's so true that what gets measured gets managed. Every task should be tracked and every meeting needs to address each task, the completion status of each task, and the anticipated completion timeline. Every task needs to be tracked and every meeting needs to address each task, the completion status, and the anticipated completion timeline. Now, if you aren't capable of tracking down to this level of detail, then you will struggle to maintain a positive team structure that you've worked so hard to build. This was hands down the biggest game changer for me while working at Shell. During my first few weeks there, I would sit pretty far back during our weekly project meetings. And like most meetings, they were, in my opinion, very unproductive. I personally hate meetings. I hate them. But they do serve a purpose, especially when they are conducted correctly. After about 2 months, I decided to hold my own meetings with the contractors and section leads, and I did this daily. Now, the first meeting went a little long. It was my first one, give me a break. It was about 45 minutes in total, but it didn't take long before I was getting those meetings down to about 10 minutes. Now, how was I able to do this? I was able to achieve this by creating a meeting with a clear objective in mind. I kept it simple with only 2 categories of talking points. You either discussed new issues or current progress. That's it. No tangents about what you're doing on the weekend. I don't care how much it sucks to work there. I don't want to hear about it. None of that. I had an agenda, and those were the talking points that we were sticking to, period. Now with that said, each category had its own set of parameters as well, and like everything else, I like to keep it as simple as possible. Any new issues required a potential solution and a timeline to accompany it. I personally hate it when people want to bring up something that they don't like and offer no solution to fix it. That helps no one. I don't care where an idea comes from. If you have a better idea, I'll be the first to listen. This is a strategy that I use to this day, and it's incredibly effective. In fact, the way I use this strategy these days is to write down all the new issues everyone brings up on a whiteboard, and before we leave the meeting, I assign each issue to someone and give them a timeline to bring me a solution written on paper. If the problem is really that important and the person who brought it up truly has an understanding of how to fix it, then they should be able to bring me a typed out solution. Now, if they can't, then that problem gets erased from the board and we move on. One less thing I gotta track. Anyway, back to that shell meeting. Now, we have discussed that new issues require a solution to accompany it. Now, that other category involves existing or ongoing work. Now, this is where follow-up really comes into play. If you really want to keep everyone on track, you have to set expectations and deadlines. The real key is to follow up frequent and often to ensure everything is moving forward. In those meetings, it was never my intent to play stump the chump or to make you feel foolish or whatnot about getting a task complete. However, if I ask you every day for 5 days in a row why this task isn't done and your response is, well, I'm waiting on XYZ first, then that is my cue to either figure out what is taking XYZ so long or make you feel about this small for not thinking outside the box and coming up with an alternative means of moving forward. Now, this is going to sound a little ranty, but stay with me here for a moment. Now, I don't consider myself to be an intelligent person when compared to engineers with PhDs or letters behind their names. I struggled with the detailed math and science behind many of the engineering calculators that we used. I will freely admit that. However, it has always baffled me to no end that these insanely smart people could get so hung up on the simplest issues and it would bring a project to a grinding halt until they figured it out. You wouldn't slam on the brakes and stop driving on your way to work because your windshield got a rock chip in it, would you? Follow up, follow up, follow up. Have a system in place to track tasks, track progress, and then, you guessed it, follow up. Use whatever system you feel comfortable to track that progress. I've used everything from notebooks, digital, and a combination of both. Use whatever works for you. The important thing is whatever you use, ensure it is sustainable and it doesn't slow you down. There are so many apps to choose from these days that we often get bogged down searching for the perfect one. Or we spend time learning something new instead of using what we have and actually getting that work done. For example, I'll admit I've spent about 2 hours researching for the perfect writing app that helps me to jam out scripts for this channel. And you know what I found out? After about 2 hours, I came to the realization that no writing app is gonna make me a better writer. At the end of the day, I just have to pick a direction and write. So with that, I just stuck with Microsoft Word and I just back it up on Google Drive. Yeah, it's not elegant, doesn't have some slick iOS user interface, and it's a bit clunky, but it doesn't stop me from typing out an average of 5,000 words or more per script. But I digress. Pick a system for following up and keep it moving. And in case you're wondering what I'm using these days, I use an LTE-enabled iPad mini 6. I like to make quick notes with the Apple Notes, and I keep track with an app called Todoist. Now trust me, I used to get by with a lot less, but I've never been one to shy away from spending a little money to make my life easier. Just a little tip for you. Also, if you'd like me to make a video on the iPad mini 6 and how I use it in my day-to-day life, just let me know down in the comments below. I'll get right on it. All right, let's wrap this up. Now guys, I appreciate y'all sticking around to the end, and I hope you got something from this. Don't hesitate to reach out in the comments with your thoughts on the subject, or if you have a topic you'd like me to discuss in the future. I appreciate y'all. Y'all take it easy.